All right, so we want to simplify. What do I need to do to simplify?
Move the negative out and put it on.
Take the negative out and make it an I. And then what are my factors of 18? 6 and 3. My factors of 6? 3 and 2. Can I break it down anymore?
No.
So what should I do next?
Circle.
Circle what?
3.
Circle the pair, and what comes out?
3.
3. I, and what stays on the inside?
2.
2. Leah, you have a question?
No.
All right, Leah, number 2. What should I do first?
Get the negative and make it an I.
And then what are factors of 32?
8 and 4.
8 and 4. And factors of 8?
4 and 2.
And factors of 4?
2 and 2.
And factors of 4?
2 and 2. And 2 and 2 and 2.
All right, so what am I going to circle?
2 groups of 2.
So what comes to the outside?
2 times 2.
2 times 2 and?
Oh, and I.
And I. And then what stays on the inside?
2.
So what's my final answer?
4 I's and 2.
Perfect. 4I square root 2. Any questions here? All right, number 3. Lucas, what do I do first?
Get rid of the negative.
And what does it turn into?
I.
And then what are factors of 125?
25 and 5.
25 and 5. And factors of 25?
5 and 5.
And what do I circle?
5.
So what comes to the outside?
5.
And?
I.
And what stays on the inside?
5.
Perfect. So 5I square root 5 is my answer. All right, and last one of these. Brooke, what do I do first?
You take the negative out.
Take the negative out and make it an I. And then what are factors of 45? 9 and 5. And factors of 9? 3 and 3. So what do I circle?
3.
And what comes to the outside?
3.
And?
I.
So 3I. And what stays on the inside?
5.
5. Awesome. Good job, guys. Any questions on those? All right, so now the part 2 stuff, we're adding and subtracting. So if we're just adding, what should I do first here?
Negative 3 plus negative 6.
Awesome. We can just ignore the parentheses and just add the real numbers together. So it's negative 3 plus negative 6.
Negative 9.
Negative 9. And then our imaginary numbers are 7i and 5i. So it's 7i plus 5i. 12i. So our answer is negative 9 plus 12i. Can I add negative 9 and 12i? No, because they're not like terms. So I can't combine them. Any questions? All right, let's look at 6. So here I have a minus. What does that get distributed to? Just the 7i. So because these parentheses are what's directly behind it, it only gets distributed to that. So this is 6 plus 3i minus 7i plus 4. So what are my real numbers here? So it's 6 plus 4. And what are my imaginary numbers? So what's 3i minus 7i? Negative 4i. So it's 10 minus 4i. If they're just plus signs, I can ignore the parentheses and just combine like terms. So what are my real numbers here? Jordan? Just negative 7. And then what are my imaginary numbers? So negative 2i plus 3i minus 2i. So it's negative 2i plus 3i. 1i and 1i minus 2i. Negative 1i. But I don't need to put the 1, so it's just negative I. So 7 minus I. So if you have 3 things you're adding, just add one at a time. Or if you want, you can add all 3 together at once. Whatever you want to do to add them. Any questions there? All right, number 8. I have a minus, so what does that get distributed to? Just the 3i. That's it, because it's only touching the parentheses for the 3i. So it'll be 4 minus 5i minus 3i plus 7i. So what's my real number here? 4. And then what are my imaginary numbers? So let's add negative 5i minus 3i first. So it's negative 5i minus 3i. Negative 8i, because they're both negative. So you add the numbers. And then negative 8i plus 7i. Negative I. So it'll be 4 minus I. Any questions here? All right, number 9. What does the minus get distributed to?
The 3 and the 8.
The 3 and the 8, because it's touching the parentheses for both of these. So it'll be negative 8 minus 4i minus 3 minus 8i. What are my real numbers?
Negative 8, negative 3.
So it's negative 8 minus 3.
Negative 11.
Negative 11. And what are my imaginary numbers? So it's negative 4i minus 8i. Negative 12i. Awesome. Any questions here? All right, next. What does the minus get distributed to here? Just I. So it'll be 5 minus I plus negative 6 minus I. So this plus a negative is just a minus there. So you don't need both. So what are my real numbers? 5. So it's 5 minus 6. Negative 1. And then my imaginary numbers are negative I minus I. So it's negative I minus I. Negative 2i. So negative 1 minus 2i. Because this is like negative 1i, negative 1. We're multiplying. So what do I have to do if I have two numbers times two numbers? FOIL. So I have to FOIL. So multiply the firsts together. What are my firsts here? What are the first ones that I multiply?
2 and negative 4.
So what's 2 times negative 4? Negative 8. What are the outsides?
2 and negative 5.
So what's 2 times negative I?
Negative 2i.
Negative 2i. What are my insides?
4i.
So what's 4i times negative 4? Negative 16i. And what are the lasts? 4i and negative I. So what's 4i times negative I?
Negative 4i squared.
Negative 4i squared. So since we have two i's, it's I squared. What do we do with the I squared?
Negative 1.
We change it into negative 1. So what's negative 4 times negative 1? What is it? Negative 4 times negative 1 becomes a plus 4. Because a negative times a negative turns into a positive. So you always change the sign of that one that has the I squared. Now we combine like terms. So it's negative 8 plus 4. Negative 4. And then what's negative 2i minus 16i? Negative 18i. So that's our answer. So you should not have an I squared in your answer because it changes to negative 1, which changes to a real number. Any questions there? All right, 12. What do I do here? Right, so I'm multiplying it by itself, so 2 minus 3i, and then what should I do? FOIL, so I'm going to FOIL. So multiply the first. What's 2 times 2? 4. What are the outsides? So 2 times negative 3i. What's 2 times negative 3i? Negative 6i. What are the insides? What's negative 3i times 2? Negative 6i. And what are the lasts? And what's negative 3i times negative 3i? So positive 9i squared. Now what do I do with the I squared? The I squared becomes a negative 1, so what's 9 times negative 1? Negative 9, so it becomes a negative 9. Now what are my real numbers? 4 and negative 9, so it's 4 minus 9?
5. Negative 5.
Negative 5. What are my imaginary numbers? So what's negative 6i minus 6i?
12i squared.
Negative 12, just I, negative
Oh,
12i.
yeah. Okay.
So again, you won't have I squared in your answer.
Okay.
All right, 13, I start the same way I did the last one, so I multiply it by itself, negative 1 plus 4i. And how do I multiply these two together? What do I need to do? FOIL. So Ian, what are the firsts?
1 and negative 1 and negative.
What's negative 1 times negative 1?
Positive.
Positive 1. Nicole, what are the outsides? So we're foiling first, outer, inner, last. So what are the outsides that we multiply? So the negative 1 times 4i. What's negative 1 times 4i? Nicole, negative 1 times 4i. So we're multiplying. Negative 1 times 4 would just be negative 4i. Perfect. Sienna, what are the insides?
4i negative 1.
So it's 4i times negative 1.
Negative 4i.
Negative 4i. And Katie, what's the last?
You have to, like, take away the 4 and make it a 0.
What are the last two numbers?
Oh, you have to multiply the 4 by 1.
What's 4i times 4i?
16.
16i squared. Anderson, what does the I squared turn into?
1 or negative 1.
I squared turns into negative 1, and what's 16 times negative 1?
Negative 16.
Negative 16. So what are my real numbers here? Juan, what are the real numbers?
4i and 4i.
Real.
Oh. 1 and 6.
1 and negative 16. So what's 1 minus 16?
15.
Negative 15. Giancarlo, what are my imaginary numbers?
Negative 4.
So what's negative 4i minus 4i?
Negative 8i.
Negative 8i. Awesome. So that's the answer. All right, so I have 2 terms times 2 terms. How do I multiply these? What do I do? FOIL. So what are the first numbers? What's negative 3 times 1? Negative 3. Steven, what are the outsides?
Negative 3 times I.
What's negative 3 times I?
Negative 3i.
Negative 3i. Iggy, what are the insides? Negative 2i times what? Times 1. So that would be? Negative 2i. And then what are the lasts? Iggy, what are the lasts? Yeah. So what times I? So the last one in each parentheses. What would that be? So the last one in this parentheses is negative 2i, and the last one in that parentheses? So negative 2i times I. What's negative 2i times I? Negative 2i squared. And what does the I squared turn into? Kayla, what does the I squared turn into?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So what does the negative 2 turn into? Perfect. Positive 2. So what are our real numbers?
-3 and 2.
So it's -3 plus 2.
-1.
-1. Lucas, what are imaginary numbers?
-3, -2.
So it's -3i minus 2i.
-5i.
-5i. Awesome.